Being an illustrator or concept designer is not the same thing as being a fine artist. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is to invent a new visual idea or to express a story. But in order to do this convincingly, you're going to need to understand some fine art techniques. So even though my job may have me drawing sci-fi environments, vehicles, and monsters, the techniques that I call into practice are all based in one thing: still life drawing. So this series of videos will explain the way that I approach lighting inside of Photoshop. Because painting is all about lighting. So to understand how light works, it's best to start with a simple subject matter and to slowly work your way into more complicated objects. Because remember, the light that's cast on a Space Marine shoulder pad is exactly the same as the light that's cast on a still life arrangement. It's also important to know that the concepts that I talk about in these videos are not really Photoshop specific. I learned to draw with charcoal and pencils, but the media doesn't really make a difference. When you're drawing a still life, whether it's on a computer screen or a canvas, is a test of one thing: seeing critically. Now, if you can learn to see critically, you can learn to draw or paint. So to get started with these simple still lifes, I went to the thrift store and I found some objects. So what I was looking for were objects that were simple, primitive shapes. So you'll notice I have a sphere, a cylinder, a rectangular prism, and a cone. Now these things cost me, I think, $1 each, and they were very simple to find. But you might notice that they've got some color that could be confusing. They've also got a variety of materials that might be confusing. So my next step was to think about them in terms of grayscale. And this simplifies the rendering equation. You've got the entire color idea you can just ignore for now. Well, so to simplify this even further, I went to the hardware store and I got two things. I got gray matte finish spray paint. It was just some primer. And then I also got some gray gloss finish spray paint. And here's what I came up with. All of a sudden, these are much more simplistic forms. And these are going to be a great way to try out some basic rendering techniques. So for this video, we're going to be using the one on the right, which has some examples of both cylindrical and cone and a few more specific forms. So I took a variety of photos to use as reference, and you'll see that different sorts of lighting make a big difference on the mood and character of the scene. So for the purpose of this series, I've used the image on the right, which involves a strong LED flashlight, and there's a little bit of soft fill light coming in from the window. So I made a point to set this up using inexpensive, small household materials, because the only way to get better at this stuff is to practice it a lot. So I'd recommend going to the store and just get some of these simple objects. Get some spray paint. You can set them right up on your desk and draw them from your computer screen. So as I said before, drawing like this is a test of critical seeing. So to help yourself get in the proper mindset, the videos in this series break the process down into the following components of light. Because when I'm learning a new skill, I like to have a set of rules to follow. It's going to be hard to call these categories rules per se, but I find that breaking down light into these categories really helps structure the way that it is you critically see your still life. So in the videos to come, I'm going to break down directional light, reflected light, and occlusion shadows, and show you how I draw those inside of Photoshop to help render my scene. All right, let's get the canvas set up and begin to draw.